Um, all right, welcome back to Dennis Deep Cuts. Today I'm going to talk about Swedish punk. And when I say Swedish punk, I mean punk rock from 1978 to 1982. I am not going to talk about Umeå hardcore of the 90s or the Hives or the Helicopters or Melancholy or anything like that. You know, maybe one day, but today we're going to talk about the origins of Swedish punk, and I'm going to show you a couple of really cool 7-inches that you might not have heard of. You know, if you're a nerd like me, you probably have heard about them, but if you're not, then, you know, welcome. If you're well versed in Swedish punk, then maybe you can skip ahead a little bit. If you're not, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction to Swedish punk for all you people out there that this might be their first encounter with Swedish punk. I'm going to do a little bit of an ABC. So Swedes were quite early to adopt punk. The Ramones played in 1977, May 1977, and the Sex Pistols played here in July of 1977. And tons of people got into punks. There was riots between the punks and the greasers, or as we call them in Sweden, raggare. There's actually a really great Swedish punk band called Rude Kids. One of their greatest of all time tracks is called Raggare is a bunch of motherfuckers. Definitely worth seeking out. So a lot of punk bands started and a lot of people started playing in bands. And in March of 1978, the first Swedish punk rock 7-inch was released. And it's this one. It's called Kriminella gitarrer, vårdad klädsel. I mean, basically this is just me bragging. First Swedish punk rock 7-inch, they made 500 copies. I think they threw away 100 copies at one show. They played at County Fair and they just threw 7-inches out into the crowd. A killer track and a killer band. It's just me bragging. But this is the first Swedish punk rock 7-inch. They're from down south, and Swedish punk was quite regional. So the bands from down south, they were all a bit artsy. The bands from Gothenburg, they were a bit more working class, a bit more political, a bit more like denim jackets and, you know, that type of style. And the bands from Stockholm, they were the most punk looking bands and punk sounding bands. I would maybe, some people would even refer to them as the most posers, the most posers of the different scenes. And then you had all the province rock. I mean, I'm from the province, and a lot of the singles that I'm going to show you today is from these provincial. I don't even know how to say that. From small towns across Sweden, basically. So yeah. If you don't know anything about Swedish punk, I will give you a couple of records that you need to check out, just because that's like they're the big names of Swedish punk. Because when I get into the 7-inches, they're definitely not the big names of Swedish punk. So the one that I'm going to start with is the band that's like the Swedish punk band, and it's this band. It's Ebba Grön. This is also me bragging. This is their first 7-inch on EFL, anti-rock. It's great. And then this is the first full-length record. We're only in it for the drugs. They did sing in Swedish, so it's, you know, the titles. I think it's supposed to be ironic. They're like Swedish The Clash, I would say. They put out a couple of records. Every record they progressed and evolved, and they're just great. If you are a Swedish person and you're into punk, Ebba Grön is the band. All the records are really cool, and the singer, Thåström, went on to have a really successful solo career. I actually saw him live just, you know, this year, and he's still the only true real rock star of Sweden. All of his stuff is definitely worth checking out. His last like 6 records are phenomenal. So yeah, Ebba Grön, that's the band, the Swedish punk band. You need to remember that. Stockholm based. And then there's another one of the big Swedish punk bands that are also based out of Stockholm. It's this band KSMB. This is their first record called Action. This is great, really fast-paced, kind of hyper energy sort of punk. They had two singers that kind of feed off each other. It was really, really special. I like their second record as well. It's way more poppy, but still a pretty solid record. So also one of the bands, like if you're a Swedish punk, KSMB is one of those, the big ones. And then I'm gonna show you a record that's not really Swedish punk, but the main guy who was a part of the Gothenburg scene. He was in a bunch of the first punk bands out of Gothenburg, and then he started this band called Cortex, this is more like post-punk, really dark and moody. Probably one of my absolute favorite Swedish records of all time. Top 3 out of the best Swedish records, hands down ever. Spinal Injuries. I think Sacred Bones did a reissue of this one, and there was a Swedish reissue that came out a while back with some unreleased demos. This is amazing. It's a must-have for everyone that likes music, basically. So there you have it, a couple of the ABCs of Swedish punk. So let's dig into the obscure stuff now. All right, so the first 7-inch I want to show you is this one's. This one's. Oh, it's Boodin's Fästning, which means the fortress of Boodin. Boodin is a small town really far up north. The 7-inch is called Människor Plastic People, and it's an anti-disco song. So it's like a nervy kind of Elvis Costello 999 vibe to it. It's like really cool guitar work and some really sloppy, hectic kind of drums. The B-side is so-and-so, but the A-side is awesome. You know, what's not to like about a disco diss track? It's their only 7-inch. They played a bunch of shows, then they broke up and they left one 7-inch behind. I think it's from 1980. 2,000 copies. It's not super expensive. I found this at a record store in Luleå a couple of years back. It's super cool. Boodin's Fästning. All right, the next one. Also from 1980, Brudboys. Brudboys was, I think it's like a play on the word Brill Cream Boys, because they wanted to antagonize the Greasers and have like a Greaser type of name, you know. This is just a 5 out of 5. It's fast punk rock, borders on hardcore. All 3 songs are fantastic, but EAP is probably the track. Super, super cool. A couple of the guys in this band went on to play in a band called Sator, Sator Codex, and then Sator, which late 80s, early 90s was like the big Swedish rock band. They're still playing today. They're still, you know, they're still doing great. It's awesome. The first band I ever played in, there might be like some demo popping up or something here. The first demo I ever recorded, we recorded a Sator cover called Pig Welly Beach, 1988. It's a long time ago. I was in Gothenburg a couple years back, and I was sitting outside a record store, as one does, and this dude walks up to me and he says, "You're Dennis, you collect records." I'm like, "Yeah. Do you want to buy some punk rock records for me?" I'm like, "This is a bit weird." And he's like, "I live around the corner. Do you want to come with me?" And I'm like, I guess if there's punk rock records involved, I'll follow you into a dark alley. I don't care. And it turned out it's one of the guys from Brudboys, and his punk rock 7-inch collection was nuts. I ended up buying a couple of really expensive 7-inches from him. So Brudboys, killer, all killer, no filler. There's like a reissue from 2013 that's worth checking out, because this one's it's a bit on the pricey side. All right, next 7-inch. If you're noticing, I'm doing it in alphabetical order because either the OCD in me, like we need to keep it tidy somehow. So the next one is Caligula's Barn, the Children of Caligula, and this is local. These guys are from Umeå, or actually from a small suburb outside of Umeå called Holmsund, and this 7-inch was on my want list for a really long time. I've been collecting all the punk rock stuff that was released in Umeå in the late 70s, early 80s. There wasn't a whole, there's not a whole lot of it. Umeå wasn't really good at producing and putting out records. But this is this is probably the coolest one. And for years I didn't have it. And I met the singer Magnus at a record store last summer. And I said, do you have any 7-inches left? And he said, yeah, I'll come by tomorrow. We'll have coffee. I'll sell you one cheap. So that was awesome. So this is the copy, and I mean, I guess it's straight from the band. Cool thing is that Magnus and Mats, the drummer and the guitar player, they're still active, they're still playing bands. Playing a band called The Most, which my record label Niveau actually put out a couple of 7-inch with years back, and they're still putting out records, like a mod revival thing. Really cool. You should check that out. The 7-inch is fine. It's fine. It's like a budget Ebba Grön kind of thing. The last song, So Red, So Afraid, that's my favorite track. It's really cool, but it's local and it's cool, and it's maybe the best local 7-inch from this time period. Thanks, Magnus.
As I was editing this latest video, I realized that Caligula's Barn from Umeå, they recorded their record in the same studio, Tontechnik, as we recorded both songs, The Fan the Flames of Discontent and The Shape of Punk to Come with Refuse, which is pretty cool. They recorded their record in like 1980 or 81, and we recorded our record in 1995 and 1997. But it's a little cool connection, and I thought it was worthy of a extra editing inclusion thing into our little video here. Yeah, that was it. See you guys.
All right, now we're going to talk about the Gothenburg sound. Now, we're not going to talk, well, we are going to talk about Gothenburg sound. We're not going to talk about the metal scene with In Flames and at the Gates. We're going to talk about the band Gothenburg sound. Pretty much the originators of Gothenburg punk. I think they started already in 1976. They put out 4 7-inches. This is the last one. It's kind of like raw rock and roll punk. That style of, it's just like really, yeah, really, really good. All 7-inches are great. This is the last one. It's released in 1979. It's called Björn Borg. If you don't know who that is, he was a very famous Swedish tennis player. And this is the one side, it's just that song. Obviously they got sued because it's basically a track where they sing about the fact that Björn Borg has never worked a day in his entire life. It's a fabulous track, a fabulous band. Someone put out all their 7-inches and some demos on an LP a couple of years ago. Gothenburg sound, that's really worth checking out if you like your punk rock to be a bit rock and roll. I really recommend Gothenburg sound. They're great. All right, let's do another 7-inch from 1979. It's a good year for punk rock 7-inches in Sweden. This is from Sundsvall, which is kind of up north. Depends on who you ask. If you ask people from Boodin or Luleå, they would say this is down south. But you know, for some people, it's up north. When Umeå in this time period had trouble putting out records and documenting the scene, Sundsvall was amazing. They had a label called Mass Produktion that is still around today. They still put out records, and they put out a lot of amazingly good punk stuff from Sundsvall in this, 79 to 82, 83. And Mass Media is one of my favorites. This is their second 7-inch called Das Jazz. This is raw, fussed out madness. It's noisy and aggressive and wild, like wild. It's their second 7-inch. I don't have the first one, which is it's like one of the biggest holes in my heart is the fact I don't have the first Mass Media 7-inch. It's quite pricey, but might have to buy. If this YouTube channel becomes a success, I'll swim in money and I can buy the Mass Media 7-inch. If if nothing, that's worth it. Both songs are great. This is madness. They put out one more 7-inch and an LP after that, and it's interesting because usually when punk people start bands, they're raw and they're primitive, and then they learn how to play, and then they, become something different. These guys, when Mass Media broke up, they started an even rawer band called Head Cleaners, or Huvudtvätt. That's even rawer, even more brutal, totally amazing. A couple of the guys went on to start a band called Brända Barn, which put out a really good LP, mid-80s, kind of dark post-punk that Invasion actually played a show with a couple of years ago. They're really cool. But Mass Media, Das Jazz. I mean, the lyrics are basically, they hate jazz music because they don't use fuzz pedals. I mean, what more do you need? All right, let's go down south to Malmö. Stone Cold Classic. The Moderns. This is like, as you can tell by the artwork, it's more power pop, kind of the Jam, a little bit the Who, kind of punky. It's like a lo-fi version of those bands. Apparently, they've only been a band for 3 weeks when they recorded this EP. It's 4 songs, and every song is an absolute killer track. Got to Have Pop might be one of my favorite power pop songs of all time. And it's kind of what it sounds like. It sounds like a lo-fi version of the Jam, but like in the most, the most positive way. Yeah. 1979 as well, good year. And then a label put out a discography vinyl record with all their stuff on it called Suburban Life, and that's definitely worth checking out. This one's been reissued a bunch of times. This is, of course, the original pressing. Just 10 out of 10, 7-inch basically. All right, let's stay down south of Sweden, and we're gonna talk about this band from Perstorp called Noise. Noise were really young. They're a bunch of really, really young kids, and this is just fabulous. I like when punk is on the verge of collapsing, when everyone's playing at the top of their abilities and their abilities are not that great. Nothing makes me happier, and that's kind of what this sounds like. They have a really weird keyboard thing that's just great. And then the last song, Hjälp, which means help, it's just Black Sabbath's Paranoid. It's fantastic. And they sing in really heavy southern Swedish dialect. And it just fits the music so well. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a playlist with all these 7-inches of the best tracks. And there's like a live clip from Swedish television with them, and you can see just how young they are and how great they were. So there's gonna be a playlist somewhere, links down below, kind of nonsense. Check that out. One funny thing is these guys were down south, they're called Noise, and there was a band from Stockholm at the same time called Noise. But they put out this record before the other Noise. This is from 1979 again. And the other Noise put out their record later, and they were like, oh, there's already Noise, so we're just going to change the spelling. So the other Noise spelled it with a C instead of an S, and they became massive. They were like teen pop sensation. They had 2 records that just sold hundreds of thousands of copies, which meant that when the International Noise Conspiracy, my old band, started playing shows, everyone in Sweden insisted on playing, on spelling Noise with a C, because Noise, the big band, they spell it with a C, so I guess that's how it's spelled. So no one in Sweden knows how to spell Noise, maybe apart from this band, and this is the good Noise, and this record is great. Not super pricey, you need it in your life, that's just what it is. All right, just a couple more. Let's go up to Sundsvall again, and another massproduktion 7-inch, more teenagers, Pissoir. Pissoir is just, it's the pisser basically. The singer's 13 years old. The drummer, I guess he's 10 years older, I read somewhere. and the drummer turned out to be a quite famous Swedish actor after this. 4 songs of teen angst where he sings about the future, he sings about the weeklies, how they're filled with lies, and there's a track called Guds barn, which means child of God, which might be one of the best Swedish punk tracks ever recorded. A 13-year-old kid chanting, God's children, you fucking children, before it blasts off into some really noisy cacophony of just awesomeness. Yeah, this 7-inch is fabulous from 1980. I'm not sure there's any reissues on this, but maybe not. I mean, it's super pricey, but also fantastic. All right, another 7-inch from 1980 from Nyköping, just south of Stockholm. Rebel, or rebel, as you would say in a different language. This one's great. A couple of the 7-inches I talked about, they're all about like angsty teens that don't know how to play. And as I said, that's some of my favorite punk when everything's on the verge of collapsing. These guys, they played in hard rock bands, and then they saw the Clash at Gröna Lund, and they said, that's what we're gonna do. And you could tell, like they paid for the recording, it recorded itself, put it out, and then they actually booked a bunch of tours because they already been on the touring circuit with their hard rock band. And these guys are players. Both songs are just phenomenal. Their playing is great. The production is crisp. It sounds great. The chorus to 100 år, 100 years is phenomenal. One of those bands, they broke up because one of the guys had to do military service, and then they broke up, and these guys could have been contenders. This 7-inch is just fucking amazing. In Sweden, for years we had mandatory military service. Everybody had to do it, and it was like it was quite contagious for most of us. And when it was my turn to do a screening process where you do the interviews, you do the physical tests, and then they assign you to like a unit or a role. My high school teacher told me you shouldn't do it. Like you shouldn't do the military service. Always, you should refuse to do it. And I'm like, yes, I am going to refuse to do this. So I went to the screening process. I was wearing like a Dead Kennedys long sleeve, and I had like a big peace sign. I had black hair, stood on all ends. And the interviews, I was like, I am suicidal. I don't like people. Just really selling the idea that this guy is not fit for military service. And then you had to do all these different tests of strength and durability. And one of the tests was you had to pinch your hand as much as you could. And I was like 18 maybe, and a pimple-faced 20-year-old is screaming at me like, you push it harder. And I asked him, like, do you think that I'm weak? And he screamed in my face, weak? You're a fucking shrimp. And then I got a note saying that I was physically unable to do my military service, which, for me, that was a big win. I got the note saying like I couldn't do it. And then my high school teacher got really upset and disappointed. He said, you shouldn't have taken the note. You should have just refused to do it and taken your prison sentence instead. And I'm like, what? Yeah. All right, the last one of the day. This band is from Stockholm. And if you noticed, all you have noticed, there's not a whole lot of women involved in this. I was going through my 7-inches. I have a couple of crates of the Swedish Punk 7-inches. There's not a whole lot of women involved at all, which is of course symptomatic and problematic for, it's symptomatic of that scene and that time. And it's kind of sad actually. But this one is great. It's like there's one dude playing guitar. Usch, which means yeah, I guess. Ugh. The first song is a stone cold classic. fussed out, really raw, kind of really punky. All 4 songs are really good, and it's one of those bands like I kind of think they could have been contenders, but during the course of their career, they put out 3 7-inches. I mean, they toured a little bit. They played with a Danish band called City X, which is really cool. But they kept changing their members. So by the time the 3rd 7-inch came out, it was like a different lineup almost, and it sounded differently. They actually changed the name. But this is great, and this is a really good band. Some of the people from this band went on to play in a band called Tant Strul, which is a really good Swedish punk adjacent band, I would say. But this is a really cool 7-inch. 1979 from Stockholm. And there you have it. 10 really cool 7-inches, a couple of ABCs of punk. Playlist down below with all of this. If you want to investigate more, let's see where we have it. Oh yeah, this is an English book called the Encyclopedia of Swedish Punk 77 to 87, which is basically it's basically all the records from this time period. So that's a book you can check out if you want to dig deeper into, if you want to be nerdy about it. And then there's some good Swedish books as well you can check out. But yeah, doing this little list, I was looking through my punk rock 7-inches, and I have a lot more. So if you like this, maybe I'll do another one. If you enjoyed me nerding out about Swedish punk, I might do number 2. No, that's not right. I might do a second installment of this. If you like this nerdy nonsense, like, share, subscribe, and give me that money so I can buy that first mass media single. Until next time, thank you for watching. Stay wild, my friends. Thanks.